Welcome to the Deep Wealth Podcast, where you learn how to extract your business and personal deep wealth. I'm your host, Jeffrey Feldberg. This podcast is brought to you by Deep Wealth and the 90-Day Deep Wealth Experience. When it comes to your business deep wealth, your exit or liquidity event is the most important financial decision of your life. But unfortunately, up to 90% of liquidity events fail. Think about all that time and your hard-earned money wasted. Of the quote-unquote successful liquidity events, most business owners leave 50% to over 100% of the deal value in the buyer's pocket and don't even know it. I should know. I said no to a seven-figure offer and yes to mastering the art and the science of a liquidity event. 2 years later, I said yes to a different buyer with a 9-figure deal. Are you thinking about an exit or liquidity event? Don't become a statistic and make the fatal mistake of believing the skills that built your business are the same ones to sell it. After all, how can you master something you've never done before? Let the 90-Day Deep Wealth Experience and the 9-step roadmap of preparation help you capture the best deal instead of any deal. At the end of this episode, take a moment and hear from business owners like you who went through the Deep Wealth Experience. Jennifer Rurka is a perception facilitator and yoga instructor. She enjoys working one-on-one with clients and wants to help them find freedom from their past and the strength to move forward. In her book, Soul Center, Jennifer shares her life experiences and the tools she used to overcome the buried trauma driving her emotions, thoughts, and behaviors. Jennifer was born in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. She's been writing for as long as she can remember and enjoys nature and walking her dogs. Welcome to the Deep Wealth Podcast, and for all you business owners out there, whether you're successful or just starting out, a little bit of a thought experiment before we start this episode. I'm really excited about the different paths and rabbit holes that we're going to be jumping into, but the question for you is this, a bit of a rhetorical one. What is your biggest stumbling block for your success? Not your business success, but your success, because your business success is a reflection of your success. And if you're thinking about that, I'll give you a hint. I want you to go to a mirror and tell me who's looking back at it, because chances are we all get in our own way of our own success. And today we're going to remove those barriers with our guest, who's an author, a thought leader, and just a remarkable individual. But I'm going to stop it right there. So Jennifer, welcome to the Deep Wealth Podcast. An absolute pleasure to have you with us. And as they say, there's always a story behind the story. So Jennifer, what's your story? What got you to where you are today?
Well, first, thank you so much for having me on the show. I had an epiphany, or what some people would call an awakening, back in 2005. And my life was going about 190 miles down the wrong lane as far as I was self-medicating with alcohol to mask all of my emotional problems and issues at that time. And I didn't even realize actually what I was doing because it was my familiar at the time. And so it got to a point where after many years of bartending and drinking, there was one afternoon where I believe I actually physically died on my couch and came back. And it was during that epiphany, that awakening, that I had a moment with what I believe is God. And everything in the room went completely white. There was no body, there was no buildings, there was no nothing. And it was in that moment, in that whiteout, as I call it, because everything went white, that I had this conversation with God, which was a divine masculine and a divine feminine energy that was speaking to me simultaneously. So in other words, there was no separation between the masculine and feminine. It was one system of energy. And yet it was letting me hear both masculine and feminine at the same time. It was very interesting. Anyways, but I was shown at that time all of the concerns that my family had been having about me, the people around me. And so when I came out of that experience, my life changed dramatically. I had zero desire to drink, zero. I went from hanging out with one particular crowd of people to not talking to them at all, to having moments where I would be walking along the river and then find myself sitting down staring at a leaf and realizing 4 or 5 hours went by because I was just memorized by watching the leaf in the river or staring at the sky. So I went into a complete bliss state for almost a year. And then after that came down into a crash that some people might call the dark night of the soul. And it took me about 15 years after that to start putting the pieces together of my life and taking me really onto a self-healing journey that essentially led me to travel the entire world, where I found myself very attracted to certain people for their modalities. That I went to Africa, Australia, London, you name it, I went everywhere, not to go there so I could learn what they had to offer and then come back and recreate it, but more so I was attracted to them because I knew they were going to help me peel back layers of my own pain and hurting and suffering to expose my own inner teachings and learnings so that I would be able to not only help myself, but eventually, like I am today, able to help my clients in what I call perception facilitation. And now it's also poured into the manifestation of this book, Soul Center, that I just wrote. So that's what kind of kicked everything off.
Wow, Jennifer, quite the story and a lot to unpack there. But firstly, congratulations on the book. And for our listeners, in the show notes, it'll be easy to be point and click. You'll have access to Jennifer's book. You can go there, pick up a copy for yourself and go through it. Soul Center, the See It Through method to take control of your emotions, heal your past, and live a beautiful life. And Jennifer, let me ask you this. And for our listeners out there, some of you may be like myself and Jennifer, where personally myself, when it comes to God, that's a big part of my life and a lot of what I do. But for other people, maybe, hey, that's not happening. It makes me feel uncomfortable. And whether you call it God, the universe, some kind of intelligence or something else, work with us on this as we go through this conversation and be open to what you're going to hear, a different point of view, and perhaps some terrific insights that will come out of that. And so, Jennifer, it sounds like you went through quite the journey. It didn't happen overnight. It was many years that you were going through this. And you finally got to the point where literally it transformed your life to who you've become today. And now you want to take that learning and pay it forward and make a difference for other people. Would I be on base with that?
Absolutely. And you know what, Jeff, can I back up to what you just said there about God for a second? I love how you were just mentioning how some people like to call it source or universe. I grew up in a family with my mom. She grew up in a Mormon household. And so when she left that household, she was really resentful towards religion. So when I grew up, it was like, no religion. God is bad. Jesus, a big no. And then when I got into the yoga community, it was further solidified when I started facilitating yoga, because nobody would say God. They would say, no, it's source or it's energy. And it's, well, okay. So in the book, I talk about how we make words absolute. So if we have some sort of issue with a word, it means it has power over us. So we're actually losing power because we haven't seen our way through that word. So I would ask listeners to, if you do have an issue with a certain word, maybe it's the word source, maybe it's the word God, maybe it's the word mother or father. But until we actually see our way through that which pains us of it, it will always be in control of us. And so as you were just talking there about it, triggered that. And I just wanted to mention that. And in the book, I help people to understand how to see their way through that which pains them.
You know, a terrific insight, and we're off to a great start, Jennifer, because you're so right, both in business and our personal lives. Words do matter. And really, some people believe that life is happening to them when it's really happening for them. But a large part of that, it's our judgment through words that we use to put on to a certain situation. And that's something that we can talk about. But let's talk about a word or a term. It's throughout the book. In fact, you even start out with chapter 1 with the term. And you said a little bit earlier, the whiteout, not a blackout, but the whiteout that happened. And that really is quintessential to your journey and your experience. And so for our listeners, why don't you give us a sense of, okay, the whiteout, why was that significant for you and why it's so foundational throughout the book and also in what you do?
Well, because that was the energy, I believe, that was encoded into the cellular memory of my entire being that really snapped me out of it from, again, my life going in a direction where I was going to die. And to the point where I really believe that I did die of a heart attack that day on my couch, where felt like there was 300 pounds on my chest before everything went into that whiteout. And so I think I just took that point of my life to understand that it's where it's led me today with clients as far as my perception facilitation. So
Mm-hmm.
when I meditate in the mornings, I go into the cellular memory of the whiteout to
Mm-hmm.
energetically stall programs that the clients coming to me are unable to do. And in that blissful state, let's say somebody comes to me and has anxiety, it is actually a program. It's a habitually woven belief pattern that's a program, like a movie that we start watching.
Mm-hmm.
So when clients come to me, whether it's for anxiety, grief, cancer, digestion issues, whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
when they come to me, I focus in on that program in my
Mm-hmm.
meditations in the morning in that whiteout. And I come into union, which is another word for God, come into that unified state and energetically stall those programs. Now the program is no longer running that client. So now the
Mm-hmm.
client, when they wake up, as the days go by, they're not being operated by, let's say, anxiety. So now, for example, Jeff gets to be Jeff without anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
So the brain actually starts to produce different chemicals and hormones for you to feel differently. That's why I call what I do perception facilitation, because the person's perception literally changes, not by way of me changing their thinking,
Mm-hmm.
but by way of me energetically stalling that program in the whiteout. So I'm not too sure if that answered your question, because I just went off on a little bit of a tangent there.
That's okay. And I have the sense we'll do a lot of that today. And for our listeners out there, you may be thinking, wait a minute, perception healing, come on, that sounds really out there and a little woo-woo to me. And for all you listeners out there, here's what I'm going to share. Quantum physics and science is now proving methodically and through all the fact-based kinds of ways that what Jennifer's talking about is real. And the ancient civilizations have known about this for eons. Modern day society is just starting to learn about this. So again, if this is not your thing, or if it sounds a little bit out there for you, I encourage you to keep an open mind and hear what's going on. And you may hear Jennifer even use the word manifestation. I know we were talking about that offline. And if you think about it, even one of the Bibles of business, Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. Come on, listeners, who hasn't read that book? In that book, which was at the time a groundbreaking book, he talks about manifesting without saying the word manifesting through some of the principles and ways of doing it that have just become standard practice today. And even today, we've approved upon that it's not so hard to do the way that it was described by Napoleon Hill. So stay with us on this. But Jennifer, let's go back to your book and chapter 1, The Whiteout, and you talked about that. And then you waste no time, because in chapter 2, you just go right at it and you talk about all of us being the victim and our emotions and that programming. So for the benefit of our listeners, what are you saying there about being the victim and what's going on with that?
Well, I love how you just led into that, Jeff, because you literally were just talking about quantum mechanics. So when, for example, in chapter 2, when I'm talking about being the victim and I'm in that victim mindset, that information is being emitted, meaning it's going out from my electromagnetic field. So what I'm consciously thinking, what I'm semi-consciously thinking, and also what I'm aware of, unaware of rather, that's being emitted even from the DNA script, it's all going out through my electromagnetic field. It's affecting the quantum field, which is like, that's the ether. That's what's connecting. That's what's in between you and I right now. And so when we affect the field, it literally, that information draws to us people, places, and situations that are going to show us what our mentality looks like. So in chapter 2, because I was feeling like such a victim for so many years, victimized by my mother, and I had unresolved issues with her, and it drew to me a lot of women that wanted to prove that to me, women that I would pull out of them their hurt so that they would hurt me. And we would create this cycle together. And it wasn't until I actually began truly healing the relationship with my mom. And that doesn't mean that I had to do it with her, actually with her. I had to do it within myself, right? First. Then once I healed that, I wasn't attracting other hurt women that wanted to hurt me because I wasn't pulling it out of them. That information changed. So I instead started to arrange healthier relationships with women instead. And so no matter what is going out through the field, if you have a lack of money mindset, if you grew up really poor, and you're like, I'm never going to have money. Your mind's constantly going back to the past. What happens is the past is coming forward and it's making the now toxic. So the past is dictating who you are today. You can't see reality, which is always friendly, until you deactivate the negative charge surrounding the past. And then the past is no longer in control of you. So you're no longer powerless, which means you're no longer a slave to your environment, which means you're not getting triggered by those same situations out there that are going to prove your lack to you or prove whatever it is that you're dealing with to you.
And for our listeners out there, again, as you're hearing Jennifer talk, you may be thinking, wow, that really seems out there. But let me ask all you listeners a question. Look around in your life, and then we're going to take it back to you, the listener. But do you know someone in your life who it seems like they have a black cloud over their head? They're always just running into these negative things. Or maybe you've even experienced that. Maybe you woke up right at the start of the day and the rest of the day, it's one thing after the other happened. Think about that, because chances are what you were thinking, your inner thoughts, really formed your outer world for that particular day. Or maybe you're in a better space, a better mindset, and everything just seemed to work for you that day. You were at the right place at the right time. You made phone calls to people you weren't able to get in touch with, and magically you got in touch with them. You got that big contract, that deal went through, all those wonderful things happened. Again, ask yourself, what was your mindset like? What was different for you? And that's really what we're talking about here with Jennifer. And personally, Jennifer, I'm a big believer that our inner thoughts form our outer world, and that whoever said business isn't personal never had a business, because the business, our inner thoughts are everything that's going to really manifest in the business. But speaking of that, let's jump to chapter 3 here for just a moment. And you start explaining the SIT method. And so big picture wise for our listeners, this is now the secret sauce that we're talking about of really what made a difference for you and for your clients, how you're helping them optimize their life for happiness, welcome success, welcome their dreams. Big picture wise, what's the SIT method all about?
So there's the SIT method 1 and there's the SIT method 2. SIT method 2 is in chapter 6, and the SIT method 1 is essentially the lead up to that. So SIT is an abbreviation for see it through, it representing the negatively charged belief. And so in SIT 1, we're essentially looking at time zones, how to become aware of how we make time happen simultaneously. In other words, the past isn't something that's back behind us that we can never get to. The past is literally right here every single time we think of it. Every single time we feel controlled by something in our lives that's unresolved, the past is overriding us. So time is happening simultaneously. And so it's about really becoming aware of that. And also, SIT 1 is showing us how to connect the positive side of the battery to the negative side of the battery to create a really battery operated mind that wants to move forward rather than be held back in life. So there are steps in that first method, and then there's steps in SIT part 2 that essentially, once you have that understanding and that foundation, you saw in SIT 2, you start to understand how to see your feelings through, which is something that I believe a lot of people, especially clients that have come to me, even in the yoga rooms, because I still facilitate yoga, aren't doing. They're not allowing themselves to feel the emotions that are coming up. But especially today, think about how everybody is like, I only want to feel positive. I'm going to wake up today. I'm going to do my positive affirmations. I'm only going to say positive things. If somebody negative comes up to me, I'm running the other way. I'm going to call my positive friend and we're going to have a great positive day. That's not how the world works. That's saying, I'm going to go hide in the Himalayas for 6 months and meditate and not be triggered with daily life. Which one do you think is more spiritual? Sure. Being amidst life is the spiritual event, not running away and hiding from it. And so when we over positive reinforce everything, we actually create a lack of self-acceptance within ourselves. We don't realize that. And we do that by making all of our so-called negative thoughts, our bad thoughts, wrong. So then we try to avoid them. So that creates a lack of self-acceptance within ourselves. Now I need you, Jeff, to fill my cup up and tell me how great I am. Now, when I go to work, my boss has to say, you did such an excellent job. And when she doesn't, I'm going to feel void. So now again, it's like I was saying earlier, I'm a slave to my environment. Now I need all this outer self-acceptance because I have a lack of self-acceptance. So in the sit method, really the totality of it, the two combination, right? The two combined essentially shows us how to accept all of our feelings so that when we do that, we fill our cup up and have this full self-acceptance within us. And that goes out through the electromagnetic field and pulls to us other people who are really taking the time and dedicating their lives to want to feel better authentically. They're not just pretending, because I see a lot of pretending, especially in the yoga rooms, pretending. They're coming in there pretending to be flexible and pretending to be strong in the classes, yet they're doing that. What they don't realize is that they're coming in and going, I just got to get through this practice. I just got to hold this pose. Instead of saying, how can I get into this pose and relax into it? How can I feel and embody everything that's coming up right now so I'm no longer running? Because some people come to yoga, they go, oh, I got to get out of my head. I got to go to yoga. I'm like, oh, you just came in here for the wrong reasons. Coming into yoga is about getting into your head, getting into it, and then seeing your way through. So feeling everything through.
Yeah, Jennifer, it makes a lot of sense. And at the risk of oversimplifying, I'm going to turn to an age-old expression that birds of a feather flock together. And back to your point, when I have a certain mindset, I'm consciously or unconsciously, probably both, attracting people who think like me into my life. And I believe it was Jim Rohn that said, we are all, each one of us is the average of the 5 people that we spend the most amount of time with. And so when we look around, look at who are you spending the most amount of time with, and are they a good influence, a negative influence? And that's going to tell you a lot about what's going on. But that really leads me to chapter number 4. And you actually came up with your own word in there. And I hope I'm going to pronounce it right. You firstly talk about reality, and then you talk about reality. And so what's going on with that? Can you let us in on your thought process there?
So reality is, it's always the friendly universe. I'm sure you've heard that reality is always friendly. That makes people that are in a negative mindset really angry because they're like, no, it's not. It sucks. And this is happening.
Sure.
And what they don't realize is that they're captivated. They're being held captive in reality, where all the negatively charged beliefs are operating them. And they're semi-conscious to reality on the sidelines, watching their lives pass them by. Essentially, they're being created by their old conditioning. Whereas people that live in reality are creators. They're actively writing their scripts. They're waking up each day in a peaceful state of mind, not by way of faking it. And that's really important, again, because if we try to fake our way into something, what's going to speak the loudest, Jeff, is that which we're trying to avoid. So until we see our way through all of those so-called negatively charged beliefs / reals that are operating us, they will continue to override us in reality. And we'll be living in this sort of fantasy land, movie set reality where we do feel like we're victims. We do feel like we're hard done by. We do feel like we can never get a break. And we're always waking up and life sucks. And the woe is me sort of mentality. So reality is something that I believe we all dip in and out of every day. I mean, it's not like we're all floating around on a cloud all day. I think that we merge in and out of both realities throughout the day. And that's the negative side of the battery and the positive side of the battery that we essentially want to infuse together, because I don't believe that we came into these physical bodies to not experience contrast, to not experience the negative. I just don't believe that we came here to be held captivated by it. I believe that we came here to see our way through it. And that essentially helps us to build success within ourselves and thus within our lives.
And Jennifer, what's interesting when you put a business spin on that, my own personal thesis for my own journey, and for the listeners out there, I'm sure you can relate to this. When I started my e-learning company, the one that I was failing forward with every day, that finally got my act together, figured things out, my success was always there. It was waiting for me. It was ready, but I wasn't. And I look back now, and if I would have gone into business the first day and had success the next day, it just wouldn't have worked because I had to go through what some people call failure, which I call learning opportunities to really sharpen my skills, become better tuned, better able to deal with all these experiences that when I finally got to the ultimate success in the business, I had gone through the experiences to really get me there. And failure, oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes, is really a better and more resilient teacher than success. Because come on, when success happens, it's great and things are going well. And I'll use the word easy, but it's when things stop happening and things aren't working out. How do you deal with that? How do you get to the next level? That's where it becomes a question. And so let me jump now to chapter 6, the SIT method, part 2. And really, one of my highlights is right in the very first paragraph of that chapter. And I'm just bringing this up here to read. You cannot be the creator of your own reality until you accept all of yourself. Without full acceptance of feeding, the ghost will remain the host. And again, for the listeners out there, it's like, Jeffrey, what have you drunk your own Kool-Aid? Have you lost it? Stay with me on this because I assure you we're going to bring it back home in the business world. This is all about mindset. And for those that have gone through the Deep Wealth experience, you know that step number 5 of the 9-step roadmap. It's all about mindset, the art side of business. Jennifer, you and I offline were talking and I shared in my experience, success happens on the art side, not the science side. That's where we generate the massive success. But back to you with the book, SIT Method Part 2. So what's going on here now? Can you bring us into your world here of the Part 2 method of how we should be looking at this and what we're doing?
Yes. And you also mentioned the ghost in there.
Yes.
So the ghost, the way that, okay, so there's the mind, which is what I see as the positive side of the battery. And there's the ghost, which is the negative side of the battery. So the mind is the one that's always telling us the positive side of things. We go astral, so to speak. We energetically remove ourselves and float off to reality in our ghost body when, again, we're hypnotized by a negatively charged real. And so when those two come together, though, as they do, when we see it, the negatively charged belief through, when those two come together, we can see how beneficial the negative actually was to our situation. It's like going back to what you were saying in just a different way. It's like, how would we ever know that we were sitting in a comfortable chair unless we got uncomfortable first? How would we ever know the fruits of success of a business, of a relationship, of health, if we didn't fall down a couple times, maybe a few times, maybe break our nose, really sometimes have hard falls, right? To do that.
And you know, what's interesting, and for our listeners, what Jennifer has been walking us through, and you do it so beautifully in the book, is you really step by step, and this is why all the listeners should pick up your book and go through it, really walking us through success and optimizing life for happiness is different for each person. There's no right, Jennifer, there's no wrong. The right answer is whatever makes the most sense for each individual person. But then you really bring it all together on the manifestation, and you also talk about the co-creating of the reality. But for all you listeners out there who think that what Jennifer just said right now about this manifesting and thinking about this and this reality is nonsense, let me ask you this, and particularly if you're a sports fan, I want you to think of your favorite athlete who's probably world-class, number one in his or her category. And I'd be shocked, I'd be absolutely shocked if that athlete before the game or whatever the event wasn't in his or her mind mentally going through how they were going to perform. As an example, if they're pick it, a tennis player, maybe they're an F1 Formula driver or a football player or whatever sports player, they are in their mind rehearsing how they're going to be on the playing field, what they're going to do, what it feels like. So are they crazy when they're doing that? Because it works. Or maybe you've spoken to business people who said, yeah, I achieved my lifelong goal and dream, and I had imagined it. It was exactly the way that I imagined it for all these years. I made a storyboard and had all these pictures from magazines posted up on it. So what we're talking about, it's happening. We may be just using different words today than what you're used to. But let me ask you this. So chapter 7, the co-creating reality. Again, can you give us a little bit of a sneak peek of what's going on there, Jennifer, and what you want us to have as the takeaway from that chapter?
Well, in that chapter, I'm essentially talking about the chakras, which are energy centers in the body, but they also have a connection to the endocrine glands, which are our body's life support systems. They're what bring well-being into the body or disease, literally illness into the body. And so let me just take it back for a second to what you were talking about with football players there, because this will tie into that too, or just sports players in general. I believe that a lot of the times celebrities, athletes, they can't actually sustain the momentum of success because they haven't cleared the past yet. So it's one thing, and it's beautiful because absolutely visualization is huge. And so watching the play before it happened, you're training your brain to create new neural pathways for this to become your familiar train of thought, so to speak. And then it becomes literally the path upon which you walk. But it's important that when we do see our past through, when we deactivate the negative charges from our past so that they're no longer overriding us today, we don't have to focus so hard at trying to sustain that momentum. It just becomes this natural flow state because the past isn't overriding and dictating who we are today because we've seen our way through it. And co-creating our reality, the more that we deactivate the past, the healthier the endocrine system is, the healthier the pituitary, the pineal, the adrenals, the gonads, the healthier the whole system is. And so what we don't realize is that when the past is dictating who we are, it does affect and impact our bodies. And so there's a scale, a chakra scale that I actually show in that chapter that has linked to it all the different endocrine glands. And so it also shows the emotional patterns and needs, as I call them, that are attached to that. So people can go to that chapter and just have a look at what it is that they're struggling with in their lives. And then it will show them, okay, well, maybe that's attaching to this endocrine gland that maybe could be attaching to these organs and so on. And so it gives them a little roadmap and an understanding, a perimeter, so to speak, as to where they might be off path and then what they need to work on to get back on path.
And speaking of on path, and again, for our listeners, you're hearing Jennifer talking, you're like, what is she talking about? Where is she taking me on this? Stay with me on this. Let's start to bring this home, Jennifer, and let's put a pause here on the book and we'll return to that. But for our listeners out there, perhaps you can share some success stories because you have your clients, you have your sessions that you're doing, your consulting that you're doing with them, you're really leading the way with them. Can you share a story or two on the business side, perhaps someone who came to you and they had certain issues and perhaps it wasn't what they thought it was? And anyways, I'm going to stop there and would love to hear from you of how your system has made a difference and what that really looked like for a person who's working with you.
Whether I'm helping them see their way through a situation with their spouse, or something with a coworker, or something on physical health level, whether I'm talking to them on the phone and helping them psychologically process that and or energetically helping them align and process that behind the scenes, so to speak, there's always awakening. So no matter what, when a client comes to me, whatever it is that they're coming to me to work on, they're always going to have some form of success rate. Having said that, there have been some people that have come to me for, let's say, chronic pain or the things where it is unmovable. And if that's the case, then I'll say, okay, this is where we're moving on. But I would say 97% of the clients that come to me always find success. So Jeff, even if just think about this, somebody that's waking up with anxiety every day and going through their day like that and going to bed like that, it's horrifying to go through that experience. So to wake up and to not feel that anxiety overriding is a success story in itself. And that can funnel into their business, into their parenting, into their relationships, into how they eat and take care of themselves, and all sorts of things.
And with that, Jennifer, I'm wondering if Pareto's Law, what some people call the 80-20 rule, would apply here. And what I mean by that, from the people that you're coaching or working with, would you say that 80% of the same issues that you're seeing time and time again, that the root cause is coming from 20% of the same things happening? And if that's the case, What would be the top one or two or three issues that most people experience that are actually holding them back?
Issues with their parents,
Okay, talk to us. What's going on with that?
unresolved issues with mother,
Mm-hmm.
father,
Uh-huh.
or God. Those
Mm-hmm.
are usually the things that are holding us back in career, in relationships, in health, in all of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, the sit method is just one of the things in the book that you can use. But
Mm-hmm.
the entire book, each chapter is really designed to act like a drip that you mainline into your system.
Mm-hmm.
That by the end of the book, you may not even want to use the sit method because the book is designed to help you want to see yourself in a way where you can no longer not see yourself. It's
Mm-hmm.
designed to help you want to be accountable,
Mm-hmm.
to understand that what is happening out there is reeling out of you. It is
Mm-hmm.
the projection of mind. It's what's going inside of us that's paving the path out there. And so when we begin to want to look at ourselves and be accountable for everything within and heal that, then the
Mm-hmm.
war out there essentially stops. And so we find freedom in all areas of our life.
And what's interesting, as you're talking about that, is a terrific segue back to the book in chapter 12, taking ownership of pain and all feelings. And I love the quote that you have in the second chapter that I highlighted, or the second paragraph. And I'm just going to read it verbatim and then have you talk about your system and what's going on with all that. And who hasn't heard this? And here's what you say: stop your crying, wipe that look off your face, and put on a happy face. Don't act like a baby. Grow up. Be nice. Stop whining. Get a hold of yourself and act like a good little boy or girl. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Some people say, well, they're just words, but they're really not. So take it from there, Jennifer. I'm passing the baton to you of what's going on with this and how your system really helps us overcome that.
Yeah, and that's really, I'm happy that you highlighted that part because if you think about it, if you go back to your childhood, did your parents ever reward you for having a temper tantrum? Did they
Mm-hmm.
ever reward you for freaking out at the grocery store or in front of family and friends and embarrassing them? No, they would say, literally, stop acting that way, act this way.
Mm-hmm.
Wipe that look off your face, put this look on your face. So it's not like our parents were trying to hold us back in any way. They were just doing what they were taught to do. But essentially, what happens is that we get taught from the time that we're little kids how to act, but not how to feel. So we
Mm-hmm.
become very good actors as we go on into life, and we become very disconnected from our feelings. And
Mm-hmm.
taking it back to the beginning of the interview, this creates a lack of self acceptance within ourselves because now we can only accept the feelings that look good on
Mm-hmm.
the outside. Now, Jeff, I can't tell you a truthful answer if you really asked me something. Let's say you came up and said, do I look overweight in this? And I
Mm-hmm.
just lied and said, no, you look great. But in my head, I was thinking, you do look overweight. But I
Mm-hmm.
didn't tell you because I held back, not because I thought it would hurt your feelings. If I get really still for a second and pull all the rubble apart, I'll understand that I'm terrified about how that will make me feel when you
Mm-hmm.
respond to me telling you the truth. From the time that we're little kids, we become very good actors.
Mm-hmm.
And we also learn how to be good liars. And then we all walk around wondering why our relationships aren't going the way that we want them to, and people aren't doing things the way that we want them to, and so on and so forth. So that chapter really takes you into shining a massive spotlight on understanding how to speak the truth, how to dig deep into finding your voice and standing rooted in it and being confident in it, because it's the vulnerability of expression
Mm-hmm.
that essentially heals the world, not the lies. If thyroid, like in chapter 7, going back to it on the chakra scale, so many people have thyroid issues. Well,
Mm-hmm.
that's where the voice box is. That's where we're suppressing what it is that we've been wanting to say for
Mm-hmm.
so long. And then it affects that endocrine gland, the thyroid, which then affects the heart, which then affects, it's like a domino effect. And so, really, that chapter, Exposing the Self, really helps us to realize how to find our truth, how to find our voice, and how to stand rooted in our beingness, and then how to emulate that to the world and become inspirations and become leaders without having to say a single word to anybody. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even going to have to coach you. I'm just leading by example. And that's really important for parents too, because again, it's the information that affects the field.
Mm-hmm.
It's mainly with the people that are right there in your home with you, and instills that same sort of wiring into them without saying, do this, act this way, don't act that way, and so on. But the see it through method in chapter 6,
Mm-hmm.
where we feel our feelings through, essentially allows us to have a tantrum and have those feelings be exhausted through us. Because when a feeling is allowed to be exhausted through us, we deactivate the negative charge
Mm-hmm.
that was making us resist the situation or the trigger by the person in the first place. And once that charge is deactivated, we no longer have a problem with the person or the situation. So it's no longer dictating who we are in that moment and overriding us.
And for listeners out there, my takeaway, Jennifer, of what you're saying, and there's a lot to unpack there, but two things really jumped off the page for me, as the saying goes. And for our listeners, here's a bit of a rhetorical question. If each of us, if we don't love ourselves, first and foremost, if we don't accept ourselves, why would anyone either respect us or love us? And then the next question for our listeners, I want you to think in your own life, and maybe this is even you, but do you know someone who, when they walk into a room, they just command a presence? You feel that they're there. You may be, it's a big ballroom, you can be at the other side, and you just feel this presence when they walk in, and they just, depending on the person, in a positive way, command such respect that you have for them and such authority that they carry with them. And earlier to your point, Jennifer, they don't have to say a word, just their physical being in there. I'm sure everyone knows somebody like that. And on the flip side of that, someone walks in the room, you don't even notice them, or you have so little respect for them, they haven't even said a word. Where are you on those two extremes? And Jennifer, my takeaway here is through your book, through your system, even your coaching, working directly with you, we can get to loving ourselves, bringing out the best in us. And I want you to tell me, here's my own personal thesis, maybe a little bit of coaching here from you. To me, here's my thesis. Every single person comes onto planet Earth with a superpower, but we're not given the manual to the superpower. We don't even know what that is. So it's our mission to find that superpower. Once we know what that is, take it to the world and pay it forward as much as we can, be a change maker in the best of ways, help people make life better with the, I'll use the word God-given gifts that every one of us has been given that's unique to us. Where are you on that?
You know, I, just like everybody, it doesn't matter how much work we do on ourselves, because again, I believe we fluctuate in between reality and reality. I too will have moments where I'm like, what's my purpose? What am I
Mm-hmm.
doing? Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? And the reels will start spinning me. And then I'll have a client call
Mm-hmm.
and we'll have a 5-minute conversation, 20-minute conversation. And the lights are going off in their head, and we hang up the phone and I go, oh, that's my purpose. And then I'm grounded back into my body.
Mm-hmm.
It's to essentially, the more work I do on myself, the better I'm going to feel about myself. And I'm going to pull to me people that want to heal as well. And then that becomes a boomerang, because when I help people, it helps me. And
Mm-hmm.
so I've never been part of an AA program, but I do know that my father-in-law was an addictions counselor with AA for years.
Mm-hmm.
And he always said that people would get sponsors because it would help them stay sober.
Okay.
So I feel like it's the same way in coaching. What a
Mm-hmm.
lot of us coaches do, or healers, or whatever you want to call it, it's all the same thing, is that the more that we help ourselves to stay in alignment, to stay grounded within our throne, meaning throne body, when we stay grounded, it's essentially helping others, helps us.
I love that. And, you know, again, for our listeners, as we begin to bring this all home and wrap this up, the big takeaway here, success in your business, make no mistake about it. There's a direct correlation to success in your personal life. If you're happy with your personal life, if you love yourself, if you know your personal mission, all that will channel and flow into your business, that you can welcome your dreams and the success that you've always wanted. And when it comes to growth and a liquidity event, that's our wheelhouse here at Deep Wealth. Again, step 5, mindset. That's where it starts. That's where it stops. That's where it ends. That's everything. Mindset is everything. And that's what we've been talking about here. You know, Jennifer, you and I could do rabbit hole after rabbit hole after rabbit hole of these incredible ideas and the wisdom that you're sharing. That said, though, we're bumping into some time and we need to start wrapping up this episode. But let's do one last thought experiment, and it's a fun one. And here it is. I'd like you to think about the movie Back to the Future. In the movie, you have that magical DeLorean car that can take you to any point in time. So, Jennifer, here's a fun part. It's tomorrow morning. You look outside your window, and not only is the DeLorean car there curbside, the door is open, it's waiting for you to hop on in, and you now get to go to any point in your life. Jennifer, as a young child, a teenager, whatever point in time it would be, what are you telling your younger self in terms of life lessons or life wisdom? Or, hey, Jennifer, do this, but don't do that. What would it sound like?
You're a lot smarter than you think. I would go back and tell myself, you are a lot smarter than you think. Trust who you are.
Wow, that's really powerful and sage advice. And thank you for sharing that. And Jennifer, for our listeners, to get more of your sage advice, we're going to have all of your links in the show notes. But if someone would like to reach out to you and perhaps even work with you online, what would be the best place to reach you?
On my website, jenniferrurka.com, there's a contact form there that you can reach me on. And I'm also on Instagram, not too often, but I do check it every now and again. More so I check the website, but that's under Jen Rurka.
Okay. Yeah. And again, for listeners, it can't be any easier. We will have a link to the website. You can click on the Contact Me button. We'll have a link to the Soul Center book. And really, your action item, listeners, stop what you're doing before your next phone call, meeting, email, whatever it is. Stop what you're doing. Check the show notes, pick up a copy of the book, and read maybe a paragraph, 2 paragraphs. Always take action before you leave wherever you are right now. So that's your mission right now. Pick up a copy of the book. Take the first paragraph or 2. Hey, you want to even do the first chapter? I'll take that as well. You won't regret it. Do that today. You'll be thanking yourself tomorrow and beyond. But on that note, Jennifer, thank you so much for taking part of your day and spending it with us here on the Deep Wealth Podcast. And as we always like to say, please stay healthy and safe.
Thank you, Jeff.
The Deep Wealth experience was definitely a game changer for me.
This course is one of the best investments you will ever make, because you will get an ROI of 100 times that. Anybody who doesn't go through it will lose millions.
If you don't have time for this program, you'll never have time for a successful liquidity.
I mean, it was the best value of any business course I've ever taken. The money was very well spent.
Compared to when we first began, today I feel better prepared, but in some respects, maybe less prepared, not because of the course, but because the course brought to light so many things that I thought we were on top of that we need to fix.
I 100% believe there's never a great time for a business owner to allocate extra hours into his or her week or day. So it's an investment that will yield results today. I thought I will reap the benefit of this program in 3 to 5 years down the road. But as soon as I stepped forward into the program, my mind changed immediately.
There was so much value in the experience that the time I invested paid back so much for the energy that was expended.
The Deep Wealth experience compared to other programs is the top. What we learned is very practical. Sometimes you learn stuff that is great to learn, but you never use it. The stuff we learned from Deep Wealth experience, I believe is going to benefit us both.
I've done an executive MBA. I've worked for billion-dollar companies before. I've worked for smaller companies before I started my business. I've been running my business successfully now for getting close to a decade. We're on a growth trajectory. Reflecting back on the Deep Wealth, I knew less than 10% what I know now. Maybe close to 1% even.
Hands down, the best program in which I've ever participated. And we've done a lot of different things over the years. We've been in other mastermind groups, gone to many seminars, workshops, conferences, retreats, read books. This was so different. I haven't had an experience that's anything close to this in all the years that we've been at this. It's 5-star, A+.
I would highly recommend it to any super busy business owner out there. And Deep Wealth is an accurate name for it. This program leads to deeper wealth and happier wealth, not just deeper wealth. I don't think there's a dollar value that could be associated with such an experience and knowledge that could be applied today and forever.
Are you leaving millions on the table? Please visit www.deepwealth.com/success to learn more. If you're not on my email list, you'll want to be. Sign up at www.deepwealth.com/podcast. And if you enjoyed this episode, if it added value, if you walked away with some new insights and strategies, please leave a review on your favorite podcast channel. Reviews help us reach new listeners, grow the show, and continue to create content that you'll enjoy. And as we wrap up this episode, as always, please stay healthy and safe.